Thank you very much, Mr Amos. And I would like to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Wolverhampton South West for securing this debate. I think we've had an interesting debate today, and it's always pleasing when there's a good turnout by Honourable Members so that we get a wide range of contributions, even if that means, unfortunately, that members are required to keep the remarks fairly brief. And no doubt we could have discussed this issue for many hours and still found interesting points of discussion. I would like to preface my remarks by putting on the record my support for a two-state solution in Israel and Palestine, and also to just, in this context, to remember that over the many years of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there have been crimes and abuses and breaches of trust on both sides. There are other debates and motions and opportunities in this House for us to discuss the rocket attacks and the suicide bombings against Israel, or the continuing detention of the hostage Gilad Shalit, for example. But today, obviously, the debate is about settlements, and I think this is a key aspect of the conflict, and indeed, hopefully, could be the key to unlocking a peace settlement. We've heard the facts about the situation that we're in with the settlements, with around about 480,000 settlers currently, and the huge growth that we've seen in this. It was mentioned that back in 1972 this number was only 10,500, and indeed the Honourable Member for Battersea pointed out that since 1993 in the Oslo Accords it is in fact more than doubled. So this has been a growing problem, and I thought it was interesting the point made by the member for Wolverhampton South West in pointing out that we use the word settlements, which is a pleasant and homely word, but of course colonies is perhaps a more accurate description of what these dwellings and towns really are. Recently, I think the whole House will have welcomed the movement in the US position towards really engaging with the Middle East and putting it right at the heart of their foreign policy. And I very much welcome the robust line on the settlement freeze that we've been hearing from President Obama and Hillary Clinton. But I would say that a freeze on settlements has to be the absolute minimum to starting the negotiations. Let's be absolutely clear, these settlements are illegal, and if we're to have any prospect for peace in the Middle East, then they will have to go. So a freeze is a starting point, but that's not an end point. They will have to be dismantled as well. And in fact, I thought the contribution from my honourable friend for Oxford West and Abingdon was very prescient when he said, this is not in Israel's interest. These settlements are counterproductive. They make security more difficult. And I think that is an important point for us to remember in this debate. I found the recent speech by Benjamin Netanyahu actually quite a disappointment. Because while, of course, at the same time, perhaps through slightly gritted teeth, he accepted the need for a two-state solution, in the same speech he was talking of natural growth in settlements. And of course we had the news last month that Israel is planning to build dozens of new homes in Adam, which is deeply, deeply worrying. If Netanyahu has been talking of the importance of Israel and Palestine living side by side with peace, security, and in his words, prosperity, this totally fails to recognise the huge negative impact on economic development and prosperity that the settlements have on the West Bank. In fact, they threaten the very viability of a Palestinian state. Certainly give way to them.
Isn't the Prime Minister of Israel in a very difficult position when his own foreign minister is an illegal settler in the West Bank?
Swinson.
The honourable member makes a very good point indeed. And of course, it is a difficult position to be in, because there are many differing views and constituencies of opinion that he has to balance. But what I would say is, in self-interest of Israel, dealing with this settlements issue has to be a priority, and that political reality is one that surely should not be lost on him. as I was saying, the West Bank has been sort of sliced and diced and carved up as part of a deliberate strategy, and the settlements have been part of that tactic. We've heard the numbers from various honourable members about the numbers of settlements, the roads that they have, the checkpoints, the road blocks, and then the security wall. And when you put that all together as a sort of overlay on the land, then you can see just how impossible it is for ordinary Palestinians to go around their everyday lives working in this sort of Swiss cheese patchwork. And when it comes to trade or education or even visiting family and friends, the fabric of civil society is all made incredibly difficult. So this is the actual impact that these settlements have, and that's why they are so damaging to the future peace in the region. Natural resources are also key, and the honourable member who secured the debate was quite right to talk about water in particular as regards the Golan Heights. And I recall when I visited Israel actually being surprised, thinking it was all about land and about sort of ideology, but actually the practicalities, particularly, I come from the west of Scotland, where access to water is not quite such the same issue, but in a sort of arid climate in the Middle East, then actually that is a very key issue, and with rapidly increasing climate change, then it's only going to become worse. So certainly that's a point in the Golan Heights, but also, as the Honourable Member for Islington North pointed out, on the West Bank, where the water is taken, the vast majority of it, for the Israeli settlers' farms, making the very fertile land used for the settlers and causing havoc elsewhere within that region. Which takes me to the issue of produce and the products that are produced from the settlements. I thought there was an interesting issue raised by the Honourable Member for Wolverhampton South West about the legality of collecting customs duties on the products from the illegal settlements. Now, unlike him, I'm not a lawyer, so I am certainly going to await the Minister's reply to those remarks with interest. But before the election, Mr Amos, I was a marketing manager, so perhaps I'm better placed to comment on the marketing of these products. And I very much agree with the comments made by my honourable friend for Oxford West and Abingdon, the importance of having consumer information clearly on the products so that people know what they're buying, that they're advertised as what they actually are. And I know that there have been some efforts made by the government and through the EU on this issue, and I support that and very much highlight the importance of making sure that consumers have that knowledge as to what they're buying, whether they're buying something that's come from Palestinians or whether it has been produced illegally on the settlements. Now, the debate, however, has been around, that whether there should be the preferential trade tariffs for these products or otherwise. Well, I think it's absolutely clear that the settlements are illegal, so there shouldn't be any preferential trade agreements for them. And I think the debate does have to move on when it comes to the produce, to actually whether we should be allowing the sale of any of these products from the illegal settlements. And I certainly think there's a case for looking at whether a ban on those particular products might be something which could be considered. And I'd be interested to hear if the Minister has indeed considered that, although I would like to make it very clear that I do not agree with the suggestion of the Honourable Member from Wolverhampton of a boycott of all Israeli goods. I think that would be an overreaction, to say the least, at this point. In conclusion, Mr Amos, we have debated settlements, as has been mentioned, many times in this House, and it is right that we should do so. Although I also would just note that it's very sad that we have to continue to do so. I do hope this new push for peace led by the new US President will persuade the Israelis to freeze and then dismantle the settlements towards a viable two-state solution. And I would certainly urge the Minister and the Government to use all the tools at their disposal, not just diplomatic words with the Ambassador, to help the Israelis recognise their own self-interest in removing the settlements.